Well, here we are, part 4. So it's time to add some hair, at least some placeholder hair to April. So I started out with insert mesh and decided, you know what, we've been using Z-spheres for a lot of this. Let's go the Z-sphere route. And just another illustration of how there are so many different ways to accomplish what it is you want to do when it comes to anything artistically inclined or related. But yeah, in this case I decided, hey, what the heck, let's do some Z-spheres. Good thing about that is I can rough in kind of the direction of the hair and some kind of general shapes that way. But you know, if you've used Z-spheres much, it's great, but this isn't necessarily the best use of it. So once I'm happy with where it's at, go ahead and create the mesh out of the Z-spheres, and then using move and smooth, maybe a little bit of play build up here, we can get the general shape of the hair. And if you notice your brush affecting the backside bases, make sure you take care of those. You know, I do it in most of my tutorials, so if you weren't able to pause this quick enough to see how I did it, it's pretty straightforward. So now that the hair's in place, I can look at the face and look at my reference and kind of get a better idea of where I'm off. So I'm using masking and move and clay buildup to reshape the face, and obviously I'm still in symmetry at this time, so you know, you gotta factor that in, that it's not gonna look exactly like your posed reference, and so again, we're trusting the process, but I think her face is looking a little better. So using insert mesh, we're going to drop in some cubes and create some eyebrows, and using one of my favorite brushes, the Z Modeler brush, I'm able to remove some of the extra geometry and then also create that low poly geometry, which helps to get some clean looking eyebrows. And right now they're obviously super simple and faceted, but later you'll see how thanks to that clean topology we're able to smooth it out. Now here I'm using ZBrush brush, and I'm just basically giving the ZBrush tool some ideas of where I want my topology to be. And you can obviously undo and go back and forth a couple times until you get it where you want. I'm not real happy with the topology on the ears, on the upper ears, but hey, it is what it is. And you say, you know, why do that? Well, for a lot of reasons. It helps the face be smoother now when I go to do my dynamic topology and stuff. So, and many more reasons. Now we're back at Raphael. And I've combined him all together into a single subtool so that I can start to build my little scene here. So I've dropped in a sphere, sliced that down, moved it around using it as the base, the stand-in base. Now I'm doing the same thing with April, you know, just combined her all into one subtool. It's not necessary, but it makes it easier for me. And then added it to the scene with Raphael and the base. And now that I've got them both in there and I'm generally happy with the scale based on the reference, it's time to pose April. So there are multiple ways to do this, and this is definitely, I don't know, maybe the slower and more awkward way, but it's also the way that I feel most comfortable doing it right now. I'd have to remind myself of some of the other ways, and I even made a tutorial on one of them, but you know, sometimes you go back to what you did 5-6 years ago before those other options were there, and that's okay. As long as you get to your final goal, that is all that matters, right? So, but basically what's going on here is I'm masking a section, inverting it, and then positioning the 3D gizmo in a way that using the position of the camera as well, I'm able to rotate things. And this takes some getting used to. I mean, the first time you do it, things may not move how you like. And you'll see there are a lot of artifacts that come from doing it like this, you know, and that's why some ZBrushers, if they're going to do something that's ultimately going to be posed like this, they'll just start it out that way and won't really bother with the symmetry benefits, because, you know, in their opinion, it's sixes. You're either going to spend more time posing and fixing up your topology, or you're going to spend that time not having the benefits of symmetry and trying to work with that. And I've done it both ways, but this is the way where I feel like I get the best results. Start out in symmetry mode, you know, that way you know that characters' arms and legs are the same length and scale. You know, the face, which is probably the most important part, is symmetrical, and so forth. You know, that being said, some people will jump back into symmetry. They'll take a clone of the face and get it oriented again into on that x-axis so that they can leverage symmetry, and then they'll just have to reposition the head back to where it needs to be. So now that I've got the base pose of April, I'm gonna go over to Raphael and do the same with him. And I'm at this stage just trying to get, you know, the rough pose of each of these characters. You know, later on in the process, I'll likely push things further, but right now it's just, let's get it generally in the right place. I'm being careful with the shell and the kind of chest piece, because those are meant to be hard and not really stretched or moved around too much. So you'll notice that I try to avoid putting the mask right down the center of, you know, cutting Raphael in half and twisting, those kinds of things. At the very end, I might put some super subtle twist just to add more energy to the pose, make it a little more dynamic. But as for now, that's something we're trying to avoid. So April still looks like a hot mess, so I had to hide her face. Just kidding. I went into solo mode just on the upper arm of her right arm so that I can start posing her hand. Because it's amazing how much that helps a pose. You know, just having paddle hands makes the whole thing look that much more dead. So, and I'm not worried too much about the geometry, the topological flow. Right now it's more about just getting that rough hand pose in, because eventually I'm going to Z-remesh everything pretty much, and then at that point I'll get a little bit more particular about edge flow. You might wonder, you know, why am I jumping from camera angle to camera angle? And that's because this is going to be viewed from all different angles, and that's one of the things with 3D sculpting, modeling, you know, sculpting in the real world with clay or marble. You know, you've got to think and be concerned about how this character looks from every single angle. I've even heard, you know, animators, and I've experienced it with what little animation I've done, that if you just pose to the camera, things will look off and your movements won't be quite right. You need to consider all angles, and then the timing and animation will be a lot more accurate and believable. But you know, you can break the rules once you know the rules, right? So at the very end, when you have your animation 99% of the way there, you can look from the camera and kind of push it right at the end. So that's part 4. We're gonna just keep on rolling. If this helped you, you know, subscribe. And in the end, I think we'll have something pretty cool.